This is Adam Gorney, Rivals.com, here at the Rivals camp in Charlotte with former Carolina Panthers linebacker Thomas Davis. Long NFL career.
Yep.
Before anything else, I want to talk about that watch. That's sweet.
I appreciate it, man. Like, sometimes when you play as long as I did, you got to reward yourself every now and then.
You deserve it, right?
Yeah.
Let's go back to the early days for you, because recruiting wasn't like this when you had that.
Not at all.
Not at all. The exposure, small school, small town. Not a lot of schools really even recruited you. What was it like? Because you were obviously putting up numbers and doing something.
And it was tough. It was extremely tough. And as a young kid during that time, you don't understand why. I felt like I was good enough. I felt like I put a pretty good product on the field, but and I ended up playing 8 different positions in like every game. So I think maybe that was one of the things that hurt me. Teams couldn't just focus in on one position. But at the end of the day, I feel like that versatility is what kind of made me who I am as a football player.
Yeah. This wasn't just playing offense, defense. I mean, this was.
No.
Break it down. You were everywhere, right?
I played running back. I played wide receiver. I played tight end, quarterback on offense. On defense, I was a cornerback. I was a safety, like a stand-up defensive end. It's crazy. One of the things that I never played in high school or in college, for real, I never played linebacker, which is ironically ended up being my main position as an NFL player. But and I was the kicker on my high school team. I was the punter. I was the punt returner, and I was the kick returner. So for me in high school, I just loved playing ball, and I loved being the guy that had the ball in my hands. So my coach trusted me enough to allow me to do those different things. But when I got to Georgia, even when I got recruited for playing basketball, Coach Van Gorder told me, he was like, hey, I don't know where I would play you at, but from what I just saw, I want to offer you to come to Georgia for playing basketball. Yeah. So, I mean, even I went to Georgia, I was a linebacker, I was a safety, I was a linebacker, safety. And finally, we had a safety get hurt, and I settled in at the safety position, and I never looked back.
There are kids now who pigeonhole themselves. If they're a receiver, they only play receiver. If they're a DB, they only play DB. You would say that's not the way to go.
That is not the way to go, because you have no idea what teams envision you being as a player. It's just your body size can be too big for the position or too small for the position that you think that you are. So I would tell kids, man, go out, be open-minded, just enjoy this process, but don't really settle in. Same thing I tell parents that try to make their kids just play football,
right,
or just try to make their kids just play basketball. Basketball is the worst, because you have these moms, these dads that think that their kids are going to be these NBA players when they could be really, really good NFL potential players one day, but definitely really good high school linebackers, tight ends, any football position that they can possibly play. But their stronghold from their parents on just playing basketball because they don't want them to get hurt playing another sport. Well, I really had to break it down to one of the parents on my AAU team. I'm like, listen, look at the NBA draft. You want to focus in on having your kid play one sport. Look at the NBA draft. It's 2 rounds.
Yeah.
And a lot of these guys that are getting drafted are 6'6" or taller. If your kid is not that, then the chances are
he's not that.
It's not that. Really focus in on making sure that you let your kids do more things, man, because you never know at the end of the day what they're gonna fall in love with. Just allow them to play any and everything. So with my son, I'm always encouraging him, like, hey, go play football, go play basketball, run track, do all of those things, because at the end of the day, if you continuing to do some kind of competition year-round, it's going to make you a better player.
And it's different skill sets, and you learn different things from the football field, even if that is. How did it happen that you got to Georgia? And if it wasn't Georgia, what were you going to do?
That's a funny story. So, like I said, Coach came in and he was watching. The whole Georgia staff had just gotten fired, and Coach Rick and his staff had just taken over. I had Doug Monroe come to my high school, and Georgia was one of the few schools that was actually recruiting me from a D1 standpoint. Doug Marone told me that week, don't worry about all the stuff that you're hearing on the outside. Our jobs are safe. We're not getting fired. Literally 2 days after he told me that, the whole Georgia staff got fired. So I'm like, man, that's my dream school. That's where I wanted to go. And now everybody's gotten fired. And, Coach Van Gorder was going in to see another kid at another school in Blakely. Blakely had it going in Early County. They were really good. And he just stopped in to talk to my coach, and we just so happened to be practicing basketball. And he sat down and he watched me, and after that, that's when I got my scholarship offer to Georgia. It wasn't about him seeing me play football or any of those things. He saw the athleticism, he saw the speed, he saw the burst, and I tell kids this story all the time because I could have skipped practice that day. I could have been being disrespectful, being lazy, any of those things. It's always good to have integrity because I didn't know who he was when he came in and talked to my coach, but just based on me being the kind of competitor that I was, always going hard, always doing things the right way, that led me to getting that scholarship offer to Georgia. One of the last guys they gave a scholarship offer to being the first guy from that group to get drafted in the first round of the draft. So I think it's all about the work that you put in, man. No recruiting rankings, any of that stuff can really define or determine what kind of player you're going to become. We had 5-star recruits that never touched the field when I was at Georgia. Then you have a kid, just speaking about Jordan Davis right now, he was a 3-star ranked recruit, but he's going to be one of the top draft picks based on his ability and how he's grown over the years at Georgia.
That's a good point. That when you get to Georgia or you get to Clemson or wherever
you decide to go,
that's the start of it, right? That's when the hunger has to kick in, right?
Absolutely. You can't. So I think a lot of kids, when you look at it, you have these recruiting wars and everybody wants you, and a lot of these kids, that becomes their identity. That becomes who they are, and they forget all of the things that they did to get them to that point. Once you earn that label, you're expected to do so many things, so you can't go in and you can't get complacent. And I think complacency is like the biggest killer of these kids that you see that are highly ranked going in. It's not that they're talented, and when they get to school, they lose talent. It's just sometimes they get complacent thinking that they're entitled to certain things.
So you get to Georgia, obviously have a great career, turn that into a first-round draft pick. What does that feel like? I mean, just to be drafted in the first round, especially from a kid that got hardly any attention in high school.
Man, it was an amazing feeling. For me, I played my entire college career. Maybe I shouldn't have, or maybe I should have. I played my entire college career with a chip on my shoulder because every time I went into a game, I wanted to make every team that didn't recruit me regret not having me on their team. So that was my mindset, and that's why I would go out and literally try to crush anybody that had the ball when I had an opportunity to.
Do you have to have that mindset to succeed in the SEC, to succeed in the NFL?
Absolutely. I think absolutely. You've got to have something that lights a fire under you, something that motivates you. You got to have a reason why. Whatever your why is, you got to go out and you got to give your all to accomplishing that and being able to do that. I look at Brandon Jacobs walking across the field right now, and that was one of the guys in the SEC at running back that I had to play against. So you gotta have a passion, and you gotta have love to want to go out and do the things that you do when you're playing this game.
To tackle a guy like Brandon
Jacobs. To tackle
Jacobs,
a guy like
looks,
that, for sure. Still look like he can play, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I was just talking to him about how his kid has outgrown him.
What's it like being in the NFL? Everybody says, I train like a professional. I have to be a professional, this and that. What is it like for more than a decade to be a professional football player day in, day out, giving everything you have?
Man, it was like I never worked a day in my life, man. Because I was able to wake up every single day knowing that I get to do what I love for a living. And to be able to do it so long when the average career in the NFL is 2.5 years, 3 years max, to know that I was able to succeed that and just go out and just compete at a high level for a long time, given the adversity that I faced, tearing my ACL 3 years in a row, thinking that my career was over, to going and making the Pro Bowl 3 years after that and making it to the Super Bowl. All of those things only happen because I never, ever lost sight of what I wanted to do, who I was as a person, and what I wanted to accomplish. So I think when you look at those things, the adversity that I faced at a young age helped me in my old age. You
tear your ACL once, twice, 3 times. Do you ever just say that's enough, or you're like, I gotta get back?
In my mind, after the third one happened, I never thought that I was going to get another opportunity to play after that. Because I understood the business of the
teams
NFL. Teams are not going to give you an opportunity, and if Carolina didn't, I'm pretty sure nobody else would have. But I had a team that believed in me. I had an owner in Mr. Richardson that absolutely believed in me and didn't listen to the people that worked for him that told him that, it was time to turn the page. He really, as an owner that played the game, he knew when you have a player that's passionate like I am and that loves the game, that loves the community the way that I did, he was willing to give me an opportunity. And even to this day, when we sit down and we have conversations, he tell me, I'm glad that I didn't listen to them. And I'm like, I'm glad you didn't either. And, you know, when you think about that, man, just knowing what a person, a player, anybody can do with the opportunity and having someone believe in you, man, it makes a world of difference.
Now being on the flip side and seeing, you know, the kids go through this, what's the advice, and is it be your best and you don't have to be dad, you know?
That's it, man. So for me right now, watching my kids and my nephews go through this process, man, it's exciting for me because I just sit back and, you know, I'm not one of those parents that tries to force them to do anything. I just have one rule in my household. If you start something, you're never going to quit it.
Yeah.
Like if you start it, if you start a season at a particular sport or any event that you decide to do, you're going to finish that event. So when I think about my son and like I said, my nephew's going through this process, I'm always encouraging them to give their best effort. You're not going to always be the best on the field, but you can be the one that has the best effort each and every time because you're in control of that.
Yeah.
You control how hard you go. You control how long you can work. That's an endurance thing. That's a want-to thing, and nobody else can really control what kind of heart you have. And that's what I'm always trying to impress upon my kids. Everybody has talent. Everybody has talent. Obviously, the range of talent, it varies based on, you know, God-given ability sometimes, but you can work your way into becoming a better player, and that's what I really focus in on with. I don't never like try to tell them like, hey, you got to be like me or you need to be like this. I want them to just go out and be their own people, be their own person, and just make the most of it.
Last thing, 1,200 NFL tackles. That's a lot of time on the ground.
Yeah.
That's got to hurt.
Hey, listen, the way I look at that, to me, I know that there are a lot more people that hurt more from me tackling them than I did from having to make those tackles. And,
yeah, I love it.
I always took pride in that, man. Like, that was one of the things for me as a player, you know, just being a sure tackler and making sure that people felt me when I brought those pads to them, man. That was my mindset each and every time I took the field. Sometimes that got me in trouble, but I mean that's a part of the game. It happens.
Thomas Davis here with Adam Gorney for Rivals.com.